Hi there, I'm Art, owner of pawildernessskills Survival Training, and welcome to the BushWacker backpacking class. So what I want to do first is I want to tell you a little bit about the class and what we're going to be doing in it, and then I'm going to go over some gear list, some ideas for you, what you could bring. So the class is really about an introduction to backpacking. So if you ever wanted to go and camp in the woods, off of the trail, away from a campground, but you weren't sure about it, and you didn't want to go alone, especially for your first time, this is a great opportunity for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to go out as a group, we're going to camp for the night, off the trail, out in the woods, and we're going to cover basic things. We're going to cover, like campsite selection. We're going to cover a bunch of fire, or we're at least going to spend some time on that, because I think that's an important thing to know. Even just as a backup or survival type thing, but you might want to cook over a fire or use a fire for warmth at night when you're sleeping. So we're going to cover that. We're also going to cover a lot of cooking over the fire too. There's a lot of different things and ways that we can prepare our food while we're out on the trail, so we're going to cover those. Now, like I said, this isn't really a survival class. This is really just a backpacking class. So we're not going to be out in the middle of nowhere, with limited supplies or whatever else. We're going to be prepared when we go out there. And I'm going to bring along a bunch of extra stuff that we're going to talk about, and I'm going to show you, things that you can carry with you when you're out backpacking. And we're also going to work on some skills so that maybe you don't have to carry so much stuff while you're out there. So let's go on and let's talk about some of the things that you will need to bring along though. So the first thing that we're going to need is you're going to need some kind of sleeping arrangements. Now that can be, a tent, a hammock, a tarp, a bivy bag, whatever you feel comfortable sleeping in. But one thing that I want to say to you is don't make this the first time that you're trying this thing out. Even if it's a tent, if it's a brand new tent, set it up in the backyard. Try it out before you come on the trip. The worst thing that can happen for you is to get out in the woods for the overnight and find out your tent is damaged, missing pieces, you don't know how to set it up, it leaks, things like that. So you really want to make sure that you're comfortable at least a time or two in the sleep system that you plan on bringing with you. Now you have a bunch of different choices. This is a very small one-man tent. This is actually probably what I'll be bringing along, what I'll be sleeping in. It's very lightweight. It's pretty compact. It's going to fit in my pack pretty well. But as you can tell, it's not going to be very big when it's opened up. So if you want a lot of room in your tent, then you're going to need to carry something bigger with you. Here's a bigger tent. Now this is a lot heavier. It's got a lot more pieces to it. But it also has a lot more space in there, a lot more room. What I would tell you is if you're coming along with a partner and you're both going to be sleeping in the same tent, that what you can do is break this down. One of you can carry some parts of it and the other one can carry other parts of it. That's going to lighten one of the people's loads, and you're not going to have to lug this big heavy tent out there, and you can still get the comfort of having a bigger tent. Now, if you want to bring a hammock, make sure that you bring a tarp for over top of that, because you're going to want to protect yourself. We don't know what the weather's going to be like, and this is a rain or shine event. It's not going to be as fun, sure, if we're out there and it's pouring down rain the whole time, but that's what it's going to be. So we want to make sure we're prepared for that. So make sure if you're hammock camping that you bring a tarp. And I recommend some actual straps for hanging your hammock. A lot of them come with, just a thin piece of rope. I recommend getting some good straps. They're better for the environment. They'll protect the trees a little better. But also, I feel a little more secure having some of these straps on here. This is just some tubular webbing. It's pretty heavy duty, so you don't have to worry about this breaking. Now, when it comes to your hammock, so what I have is, this is my hammock inside. This is a very inexpensive hammock. It's served me very well. I did a few things, like I changed out these, the carabiners on the end for some that are stainless steel, so they're not rusting. But what you want to do, this is called, what I did here on this one was I made an underquilt to go under my hammock. So my hammock is inside of this mummy bag. And what that does is it actually stops the air from flowing underneath your hammock, or that's your intent, is to stop that flow of air from under your hammock and making you cold at night. I would recommend, if you've never hammock camped before, that this is definitely something you might want to try out first. Now we're going to be going usually late spring, early summer on these trips, but still, it might be nice during the day, but at night it's going to get down, temperature's going to get down, so you're going to want to make sure that you have an underquilt under your hammock, or you're going to get cold if you don't. Now I have a video on my YouTube channel that shows how I put this together. If hammock camping is something you want to do, I go out and watch that, and you know, make sure that you have an underquilt on there to try to keep you warm. So now another thing you could do, if you're comfortable with it, is you can just go pick yourself up a tarp and you can sleep under that. And that's probably what I'm going to be also bringing along with me. I'll be bringing that very small one-man tent, but also bringing a tarp with me. If we have an open fire, if we're able to have that when we're camping overnight, this is my preferred way of sleeping, is sleeping under this tarp. And we're going to go over a few ways to put this up so that in case you're out, you know, you can even put something up to protect you and keep your gear dry if it's raining while you're setting your tent up. So we're going to cover tarp shelters also while we're out there, just to give you a little backup even if you're carrying a tent along with you. Now I would recommend bringing a tarp anyway, because what you're going to want to do if you have a tent is you want to put that under there. You can use a tarp, or you can buy a ground cover. In my opinion, purchasing ground cover doesn't really make sense. They're just more expensive. I can go to, you know, Walmart or wherever, and I can buy a pretty cheap tarp that I can put under my tent. You want to do that, you want to have a layer between your tent and the ground. And speaking of layers, one thing that I do recommend is that you bring along a sleeping pad. When you're out, the thing that is going to make you the coldest is the ground. So we don't want to be camping directly on the ground. So even when we're in our tent, we want to have something, a barrier, that's between us and the ground. So this is just a pretty inexpensive sleeping mat that I picked up. But you know what else I found? I found this at a yard sale. It's just an exercise mat. It works just the same. It has the Velcro straps built right in. I can roll right up, and it still you know, gives me a layer to keep me up off the ground. Now they also make inflatable mats that you can inflate when you get out there, and they're very small and compact, so you can press the air out of this, and it takes up a lot less room in your backpack. The one thing I will tell you, the reason that this is inflated is because it does have a hole in it. Now if you find that hole, you can usually slap some duct tape on it, something like that, and cover it up. But that's why this is not really my preferred thing to carry with me, just because you know, just a stick or a stone or anything can really just puncture this and put a hole in it. It is nice, especially if you're trying to, you know, cut down on your space and your weight, because this does compact down pretty small whenever you deflate it. Another thing, I like to bring a pillow with me. Now you can bring a full-size pillow if you want, but one thing I'll tell you throughout this whole thing is I don't care what you bring with you, but you're carrying it. And that's what I tell my kids. You can bring whatever you want into the woods, but you're the one carrying it. So you don't want to have to carry a whole lot of unnecessary gear with you, and that's something that we're also going to talk about during the you know, the day and over the night. But so what I do is I bring one of these small travel pillows with me instead of a full size. Squishes down pretty far, but it still gives me a pillow at night. Now, just because you have a tent, you're also going to need a sleeping bag or blankets or something like that. This is a wool blanket, and sometimes I take this with me. Now if you get the good wool blankets that are 90–100%, you're looking at probably around 5 pounds of weight for this blanket. But the nice thing about it is, especially if, you know, we're sleeping under a tarp or we're sleeping next to the fire, this isn't going to melt the way that synthetics are. So if you have your synthetic sleeping bag and some sparks get on it, you're going to get holes melted in it. So I like to carry the wool blanket with me if you have them. If not, you know, you can just carry, this is just a normal old sleeping bag. Now, I personally, I like to stay away. I don't think you have to buy like the top name brands, but I like to stay away from kind of the generic kinds, like the generic, Walmart brand, things like that. I like to go kind of in the middle. Coleman, I've had a Coleman tent for a lot of years and that has never failed me. And so I like to, kind of keep in the mid-range for things. Now, obviously, if you're trying to, once again, cut the weight or cut the space in your pack, then that's going to cost you more. So the smaller, the more compact things are and the lighter they are, the more they cost. So that's something that you'll have to make a decision on. But just a normal sleeping bag should do you well out there. Now this is an Army sleeping bag. It's a modular sleep system, so it has a couple of different components to it. It has 2 sleeping bag parts, and then it has a bivy sack, which is a waterproof sack that goes on the outside. This will definitely keep you warm most of the year. It goes down, I think, to like a -20. But if you can see, this is also a hefty package for me to haul out in the woods. So once again, these are just some of the choices that you have, but you also have to remember that you have to carry all this stuff. Maybe in the wintertime, if I was pulling a sled, I would carry this, but for our trip, I don't think you're gonna need this big of a sleeping bag. What you will need are some extra clothes. You wanna make sure that you bring extra clothes. Even if it's nice and sunny during the day, at night it's gonna get colder. Now what I like to do is I like to bring my extra clothes, what I call my sleeping clothes. So they're nice warm clothes, and that way I can get out of the clothes that I've been hiking in all day and I can have some fresh clothes to sleep. And then when I get up in the morning, even if I'm putting the same clothes back on, at least I was out of them for a couple of hours while I slept. But you want to make sure that you definitely bring extra clothes with you. Now what I like to do, so these are some heavier pants, but you can also have like wool long johns or long underwear that you bring. I also like to bring a sweater along. This is nice, I can sleep in this. This is a nice wool sweater. I definitely like to bring my wool watch cap with me also. Whenever I'm sleeping, I like to have a nice warm hat on. I think it does keep me warmer while I'm sleeping, especially because a lot of times, depending on how you're sleeping, your head is actually exposed. If you're under a tarp or in your hammock, your head's not completely covered from the wind blowing and stuff, so I like to have a nice wool hat on. Along the lines of clothing, you should bring along some leather gloves if you have them. I like to just have gloves, if your hands get cold or whatever, you can put them on. But I like to have the leather ones in case I have to mess with the fire or something. It's nice to have the leather because they're not going to melt like synthetic gloves would. Rain gear. I would definitely recommend bringing something, even if it's just a poncho, but you can bring, this is a Frog Tog's jacket that I can put on and I can button up and has a hood on it. What I would try to stay away from are those like $1 or $2 emergency ponchos. They don't last too long, and when you're out in the woods, it's very easy to get them snagged on a tree branch or something like that and just rip them up. So I would get a little bit better of a poncho or a rain jacket for this. Now this is a dry bag, and what I do is this is what I carry. Remember I talked about my sleeping clothes, the clothes I wear at night, so I carry them in this, because then what I can do, if I don't bring along, it's on the bottom of the pile there, if I don't bring along a pillow, I could actually use this as my pillow. I can put the clothes in, if they're not wet, the clothes that I wore while I was hiking, I could put them in here and I could use it as a pillow. I could also fill it with leaves and other debris also. But I like to pack my extra clothes in a dry bag just in case, even if I have a pack cover on to keep the rain out, I want to make sure that my clothes stay dry. And I can put in whatever else in there that I want to make sure stays dry. A few things else to bring along. One thing, if you should bring along a fixed blade knife. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Here is just a little knife that comes with a plastic sheath. This is made by Mora Knives of Sweden. They're a very good, inexpensive knife, and they're great to carry along. Now you can bring a folding pocket knife if you want. Some of the things I'm going to show you how to do, they're not going to work very well with this, but you can always opt out of doing that, so that you don't damage your knife. For me personally, I carry my fixed blade knife for my camp work, and I carry a pocket knife for my food work. So whenever I have to prepare food, I'm always using this knife that I didn't use in the dirt or in cutting up wood or whatever else. So I like to carry a pocket knife, and then I keep it clean for food. Now, speaking of food, we will be bringing food along for you for the trip. I do recommend that you bring a couple of backup meals with you just in case you don't like what we're having, and definitely bring some snacks, some trail snacks to have along the way. We're not going to be hiking a great distance. We're going to spend a lot more time at the camp, making camp, learning about setting up the camp than we are hiking. But we're still going to be exerting energy, and we're going to need to have, you know, some fuel for it. So you bring some snacks along. The meals we're going to prepare, I'm going to try to show you some different things that you can pack with you whenever you're out backpacking, just so you don't have to eat the same things every day, and some different ways that you can transport some food and have, you know, some fresh food along the way. You'll also want to bring along some kind of eating utensils, whether it's just this is just a stainless steel cup. This is actually just a plastic insulated cup. You can bring a bowl or a plate, whatever you want. I usually just carry these, but whenever we have the food, we're going to need to put it out and to eat into something. I like to do this, and I like to bring this because then I can drink out of this too. If we have hot drinks with us, or even just, you know, my water in here. So I like to have two things with me whenever I do it. Now, what I actually carry along is this is a Stanley Cook Pot. I picked it up, and it actually, that's where these came from. They were inside, they were included with it. I like this thing. It's a little bigger, but it works great for heating water in, and that's really what we're going to do a lot for our meals, is we're going to need to be heating up some water. So I get this Stanley pot. Comes with the lid. It does come with the handles that I have in here. And then mostly I just carry a spoon with me. There's not much that you're going to eat that, you know, you can't eat with a spoon that you would need a fork for. And it's a lot easier, I think, to carry this. You can also get a spork, which is a combination. I don't usually really like eating with those, so I just carry a spoon with me, but you can bring whatever along that you want to eat with. A few side items. Definitely make sure that you bring along some kind of light. Now, for me personally, I've kind of gotten away from flashlights, and I go more for headlamps now. It just makes it so much easier to put this on, and I still have both hands free, but then I can get a light to work with. This one I have has a red mode, and then a low and a high on the white light mode. And it's nice because whenever you're around camp, sometimes you can just put it on the red light. You'll see when you get out there, it's pretty dark out there, you know, being away from the lights of civilization. And you'd be surprised at how much a red light is enough for what you need to do. Now, another thing I carry along, this is a Lucy brand light. This is really nice because it's solar powered. So what I do is I can charge it during the day, and then at night when we want to use it, we can just inflate this and turn it on. And I doubt you'll be able to see it, it's pretty sunny out, but we're just going to turn it on, and this plastic that we just inflated will help diffuse the light, and it works as a great lantern. This also has a flashing mode on it. I like to do that if I need to get up in the middle of the night and go out to the bathroom. I put it on the flashing mode near my tent or my shelter so that I know where to come back to. That's one thing you got to watch. You don't want to get up in the middle of the night, go to the bathroom, and then you can't find your way back to camp. Speaking of that, one thing, make sure you bring along some toilet paper. You're probably going to need that. We'll talk about it a little bit over the weekend, but make sure you bring along some. As far as other toiletries go, toothbrush, toothpaste, that's what I just recommendations here. I like to bring along some wipes, you know, especially when you're doing food prep. It's nice to be able to wipe your hands off when you're done. I also bring along just a little bottle of sanitizer, hand sanitizer. I also like to bring about a little thing of foot powder because, you know, especially if you're going on a longer hike, you want to keep your feet nice and dry. Now, we talked about food. Now, as far as water goes, we are going to be sourcing our water locally. Now, for the extent of time that we're going to be out, we really don't want to lug all that water with us. I mean, we're talking a couple of gallons of water that you're going to need to bring along just for yourself for drinking. So what we're going to do is we're going to camp somewhere where there's a water source nearby that we're going to be able to get water from. But it is, I guess, what we would call wild water. It's untreated. So what we want to do is we want to have some method of treating it. There are two ways that I like to do it that I think are very reliable and dependable. This is called a mini Sawyer water filter. Works very well. You can I like the Sawyer brand because this screws onto a plastic bottle, like a Aquafina drinking water bottle. It also screws onto a bag that comes with it, but also the same screw threads are for other bags, water bags, so that you can screw this on and you can actually roll down and squeeze this bag and force the water out through here. So I like to have this, and we will have a few of these on the trip with us. Another thing you could do is if you want to treat your water with tablets, these are the best ones that you can buy out there. And I'll tell you, I'm not a chemist, so I'm just going to hold it up to you whenever I find the ingredients in this, because I definitely am not one to be trying to pronounce these chemical names. If you can't read that, hopefully I'll add something into the video and edit it. But one way that you can tell if you're getting the best out there is they take 4 hours to work for maximum effectiveness. And then they're also effective against bacteria, viruses, cysts, such as Cryptosporidium and Giardia. And that's what you're really looking for, are the ones that are good against Giardia and Cryptosporidium. Because, you know, I don't know how much is in the water out there, but we don't want to take a chance of getting sick while we're out on the trip. Now, another way that we're going to be able to purify some water is to boil it. So what we need to do is I recommend bringing along a stainless steel water bottle that we can boil in. Now you want to make sure that you don't get any of the vacuum bottles. You don't want 2 layers here. You just want straight up stainless steel. If you bring along one of these cups, these work fine too for boiling, and we're able to boil inside of this too. Here's another thing. This is just a waterproof box, and I believe where we're at, we're probably going to get pretty good cell service if we need to make phone calls or anything like that. I know when I go out, my wife always likes when I can at least send a text and let her know everything's going okay. But I have a phone case here that my phone fits in, and I'll be putting my phone in this because this is waterproof. So even if I throw it in my pack until, you know, we get set up with camp and then get everything going, and then just maybe text her in the evening, I want to keep it dry in case it does rain out there. Also, now I'll be carrying along a bigger first aid kit, but if you have any first aid items or any medication that you need to bring, you'll need to bring that for yourself. Mostly what will happen if we do have any accidents, if it's just a minor accident, you know, we're just going to bandage, you know, we're going to clean it, we're going to wrap it. If we have any kind of medical emergencies, basically what we're going to do is we're going to stabilize you, and we're going to call for help, and we're going to have you evacuated. So we're not going to have, you know, a giant you know, medical kit with us. We're just going to have some for the basics and some to be able to take care of anything that might come up. Now I want to take 1 second here, it's probably going to be more in a second, but I want to talk about the packs that you carry. So this is just a 2-day, 1 night, so we're not going to be out for a real extended period of time. Like I said earlier, make sure that you do bring extra clothes with you, even though we're not going to be out that long. This is probably the biggest size pack that I would think that you would need for this kind of a trip. Now there are bigger, there are full size. You know, here we are with a full-size pack, and what I've always found is the bigger the pack, the more you stick in it. I find that you're sticking, you know, everything but the kitchen sink in here just because it'll fit. So if we keep it down and we limit this to kind of a medium-sized pack, I don't think you'll be carrying a lot of unnecessary things along that, you know, with you because they won't fit in the pack. And that's a lot of things we're going to talk about when we're out there, is some of the things that maybe you don't need to bring along. What we're going to do is we're going to look through your pack, and we're going to make some determinations, you know, whether that's something that you really needed to bring or not. I, on the other hand, am going to be bringing a big full-size pack because I'm going to be bringing along a lot of extra things for everyone out on the trip. So, another thing I wanted to talk to you about were hiking shoes or hiking boots. Just like when I talked about, your tent, making sure you try that out beforehand. You should do that with your boots too. Don't run out and buy a brand new boots the day before you're going to come on the trip, because you're going to end up with blisters on your feet. You want to have these boots, you want to wear them a little bit. I honestly will probably not be wearing the traditional hiking boots. What I really like to use now are trail shoes. A lot of people get them for when they're trail running. They get these, they're very lightweight. You can get them waterproof or you can get them non-waterproof. Depending on the conditions out there, if I'm out hiking a lot, I like to get the ones that aren't waterproof, because if you get the waterproof ones, your feet are just going to sweat in them, and then they're never going to dry because they don't breathe, they don't have air in them. So I like the non-waterproof, definitely for whenever it's getting warmer out, which it should be getting close to that whenever we go on this trip. So I would recommend either hiking boots or some trail shoes. Like I said, you can make the determination whether you want them waterproof or non-waterproof, but definitely make sure you wear them and try them out before you come on the trip. One last thing here. I mentioned earlier that we were going to talk about fire quite a bit over the weekend. We're going to make sure that we're all comfortable building a fire if we need it. Stick a lighter in your pack, stick a lighter in your pocket. They're relatively cheap, and it's something that you really want to have with you whenever you need it. And we're going to talk more about that, but if you can bring a lighter or two along, that's great. You always want to be prepared just in case. So I appreciate you hanging in there. This took a little time to go through, but I wanted to make sure that I covered everything in case you were unable to come beforehand when we're going to meet up to discuss some of the things that you might be able to carry along. So feel free to post questions here, email me, whatever we need to do we can discuss before you come to class, just to make sure that you're prepared and you're comfortable whenever you come to class. So thanks again for your purchase, and we'll see you then.